Hello, Kansas and Western fans. It's time for the final episode of how I design the different scenes on my layout. And here we have the Union Tank Car Company. This whole scene was an afterthought. I had no original plan to build anything in this area. If you're familiar with homes that have kind of a half-buried basement, that's what this is. It's kind of a half wall, and then there's a window there, so ground level is right about where that wall stops. And originally I was going to have my whole layout in this room, and then I was going to display railroad memorabilia and collections and stuff along this wall. Didn't really have much at the time, and so as I was building the layout, this was just a catch-all, and it still is a catch-all. You can see all the stuff I have stored on this thing. Eventually this is all going to get covered up with some curtain, can't think of the word right now, but it'll all be covered up, so you'll be able to see that. But the reason that it exists is because early on in my design process, and as I was building the layout, someone suggested that I could use this space. And I'm sorry, I don't remember who that person was right now, but that got me to thinking, I wonder if I could use that. And so at that point, it was basically a challenge to try to figure out how to reach this space. And I think the original intent was, a lot of people I don't think like having a large stub-ended yard like this. And so they wanted me to carry across this aisle from the yard and then curve off in that direction so I could do a continuous loop, or curve back off in this direction, which I did consider for a while because that wall goes into my family room, and I sheetrocked all this, so I know that there is an empty space there behind the sheetrock where there's not a stud right in the middle, and I could theoretically cut a hole in the wall and carry it on into the family room, but as of yet, I have not received permission from the real boss in the family, so I'm not worried about that right now. So the other idea was to carry out from the yard and curve around so I could have continuous operations. But if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that continuous operations are not important to me in general, and then especially not on this upper level, because I'm trying to reproduce prototypical operations. So here in front of you is the Wichita yard, and off to the left is Towanda and El Dorado and the refinery. And in reality, that's an out and back run for crews from Wichita, where they do a one-day run that goes out to El Dorado, they drop off cars and they pick up new ones and just run back to Wichita. And I thought that would be a perfect thing to emulate because given my layout design, it wasn't going to be super practical to do a continuous loop anyway. And since it wasn't important, then let's just copy the prototype. So I didn't really want to, or wasn't concerned about doing a loop from the end of the yard around to reach this space. The other reason I didn't want to do that was this would have required a bridge right in the middle of my layout that I would have had to do a lift out. And this is about, I'd say 42 inches in width, so a pretty significant bridge. And then it stands at about 55 inches high. So it wouldn't be a horrible duck under, but it would be something I would have to duck under every single time I wanted to go from one side of the layout to the other, and that's just not something I really wanted to do. I'm 6'3" myself, and so I think I would have just gotten tired of having to do that. Anyway, so what I came up with was to add this bridge, this lift out section here in front of the electrical panel. And a viewer has asked me how I access that panel, and I'm going to illustrate that in an upcoming viewer questions video, so we're not going to get into that too much because that's not what this episode is about. But that's where I had the least pain to reach this wall, was to just build a little lift out section here out of the way. I don't have to duck under it. I don't have to remove it hardly often at all. My house is pretty much finished basement-wise, so there's no reason I need to get into that other than to reset a breaker, and I think I've had to do that twice in the almost 8 years I've lived here. So not something I'm concerned about. It is lift outable though. So if I do have to get in there, it's not a big deal to do that. Anyway, so that's what I came up with for accessing this wall, was just do this little curve because I had the main line coming down through El Dorado anyway to reach the refinery. So it wasn't a big deal to just go ahead and have it continue on through the refinery and behind where it was going to be out of the way and made sense anyway. So that's how I accessed this area here along this wall. Now, as for the design of the scene itself, it was pretty simple because the depth of this scene is only about 9 to 10 inches. it scoots back a little bit there where the window cutout is. So I went ahead and stole an extra inch of space there to help make my buildings fit a little bit better. But here is a photo from Google Earth that shows the real thing on the north side of El Dorado. Now, the issue with this, the prototype versus my model, is you can see the primary structure for the business itself is all pretty much one building. And I chose not to do that because that would have taken up the entire trackage, I guess, from front to back, or floor space. And essentially what I would have been doing was hiding all of that activity that goes on in those buildings. So I decided to break it up into 3 separate buildings. And my methodology, since I don't have any knowledge of how this business works, is this first one would be for cleaning, the second one would be for repair work, and the last one down there would be for paint or anything else minor that needs to be done. So that's how this trackage works, and we'll go ahead and start at the beginning to fully describe it. You have the main line that wraps around over the bridge, and then it splits off in 2 different directions here. This left-hand side where the locomotive's sitting, that's kind of the ready pocket, the ready track for the switcher for the Union Tank Car Company, because it has a lot of work to do outside of arrivals and departures. So I have a locomotive dedicated just for this scene. And then here in the foreground is the outbound track. Now here on the right-hand side, you can see the track splits off. Again, I mentioned this would be the cleaning building where cars would go first. And then in the middle here, that's the kind of the arrival track that comes in. And again, on the left is the outbound track. And then here we have a crossover. So cars that just need to be cleaned out and repainted can bypass the maintenance shed or the repair shop, because not all cars, I'm sure, come in needing all the same work. So that way they can be, hang on a second. Sorry, wife called again. Anyway, so that way they can bypass it. And it also allows the train that arrives to park here on this middle track and the local engine to escape its train, pull off here on the left-hand track, pick up the outbounds, which that's what this track here is on the left is. That's where all the cars that are ready to go are parked. And then it can make its way around all the incoming, or all the cars that it just brought in, and leave and head back out towards Wichita. So that's the description of the tracks. I guess I don't want to forget the end here. And here you can see where the track from the repair shop just continues on to one of the paint bays. And then you have a separate track that goes to a second paint bay. Plus you have the crossover for the switcher to get to any of those tracks. And so that's how this works. And so dedicated for this scene and this operation is a single operator who operates the switcher and takes down the inbound train, sorts it as needed for the work orders for each car, and then puts them in place. And then as each car finishes its stage of work, pulls them out and then sticks those onto the next the next structure for work or onto the outbound track. So that's how this scene works. Really don't have much left to do here besides track weathering and ballast, a lot of detail work, and a backdrop, obviously. But the only issue with this industry is this is the best picture that I'm probably ever going to get, because there is no public access around the perimeter of this industry. The only access is basically a private road for the business, and there's actually a sign that says no trespassing, so you can't get in there to get any better detail than this. So I'm basically guessing as to how this works. Maybe someday I could get a tour, who knows? I don't really know anybody that works out there. But I'm just going to reproduce this industry to the best of my ability in this area. So if you have any questions about how this was designed or any decisions I made about that, please leave those in the comments below. Otherwise, I guess that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this series of how I designed certain elements of my layout. Have a great day.